Good afternoon on this beautiful day in downtown Indianapolis. Thanks to Cummins for hosting a very important announcement today. At the 2024 budget proposal that I gave to the council for its consideration of several weeks ago, I offered an increase to the 5-year Department of Public Works capital plan that would total $1.2 billion. Now, that amount will permit dramatic improvements to our city's infrastructure. But that number would be unthinkable without federal aid that supplements an inequitable state road funding formula. You knew I was going to get that in there. And thankfully, Indy has a couple of friends in important places, and that's a good thing. After efforts from Congressman Carson and Secretary Buttigieg, our city was awarded a $25 million raise grant from the U.S. Department of Transportation. In essence, that grant will convert 8 of our busiest thoroughfares from one-way streets to two-way streets, like Alabama, right behind us. That's important because safer, more pedestrian-friendly streets lead to a better quality of life and a welcoming city for visitors. And they will be a force multiplier to development throughout our downtown, like the transformation of Old City Hall that we announced just two days ago. These upgrades will also serve as Indy's contribution to the overall ambition of the federal RAISE grant, which, by the way, stands for Rebuilding America's Infrastructure with Sustainability and Equity. RAISE. You can applaud on that one. The plain fact is, whether you drive, ride, bike, walk, you deserve to get where you're going safely and efficiently. And that's what this money will be used for. So with that, it's my pleasure to hand things over to the president, the great president of our City County Council, President Vop Osili. Vop.
Thank you, Mayor. Good afternoon, everyone. I want to begin by expressing my appreciation as counselor for much of downtown Indianapolis and its many high-traffic, one-way streets, and as a homeowner and neighbor who lives along one of them. I want to express my appreciation to Secretary Buttigieg, to Congressman Carson, Mayor Hogsett, and DPW Director Herget for making this project a reality. And I understand when people hear the name Rebuilding American Infrastructure with Sustainability and Equity, that one-way streets may not be the first thing that springs to mind. Our justice system, our healthcare system, our highway system, even our food system, is more readily and more often linked to issues of equity than our local streets. During the 1960s, the conversion of two-way streets to one-way streets all across our country and here in Indianapolis helped facilitate white flight out of our urban core and into the suburbs. One-way streets made the commute faster and easier, and simultaneously turned largely black neighborhoods around our urban center into places that drivers pass through on their way to somewhere else. One-way streets, those that become high-traffic thoroughfares, have served the needs of people who don't live in the neighborhoods that those streets traverse, not the ones who do. The speed, the sound, the soot, the lack of pedestrian and cyclist safety are the antithesis of what any resident would want in their neighborhood. Today, we turn a page in the history and the impact of both on the smallest unit of civil society, and that's our neighborhoods. When neighborhoods are healthy, the community is healthy. And when the community is healthy, the city itself is healthy. And thanks to the work of Secretary Buttigieg and the efforts of Congressman Carson and Mayor Hogsett and his team, and partners like Kelly Murgo from SEND, Indianapolis is about to get a lot healthier. In a city and state known for hospitality, we're about to make the built environment much more hospitable to our own families and neighbors. The RAISE grant will allow us to revive neighborhoods along high-speed, high-traffic, one-way streets, breathing new life and energy into them as places that capture our city's welcoming spirit, that are inviting for people of all ages, and where motor traffic is calmed and walking or biking are prioritized. The long-term changes, or the long-term results of these changes, will be safer, more connected neighborhoods for residents, safer transportation for motorists, pedestrians, and cyclists, and a more equitable city for all of us. And here to share more about the importance of the neighborhoods impacted by the RAISE grant is Kelly Murgo from Southeast Neighborhood Development. Kelly.
Thank you, President Osley and Mayor Hogsett. Mayor Jones, second time visiting in a week, so I just want it to be known that the third time my family and I expect an invitation over for dinner. I'm honored to be here today to represent Southeast Neighborhood Development, or SEND as we are commonly known, a community development corporation that serves 24 neighborhoods across the southeast side of Indianapolis. SEND recently celebrated its 40th anniversary, and although I hope it's clear that I was not involved with the organization as a young child when it was founded, I can tell you that I have lived in Fountain Square on the southeast side of Indy for 17 years, 2 blocks from the cultural trail where my son took his first lesson to ride a bike. Through these years, I've served my community as a volunteer and SEND director and have seen tremendous change. The RAISE funds we're highlighting today will accelerate that change even further. These two-way conversions will maintain a connection to the center of our city while still making our neighborhoods more attractive to live, work, and play. My years in community development and transit advocacy have taught me that it takes leadership, even in the face of adversity, to bring about transformative change. That's why I'm grateful to the local and national leaders with me today whose policies and investments put people and equity first. Nestled between the Fletcher Place and Fountain Square neighborhoods, we have a unique pocket park. Some of you may know it, the Idol. I think Secretary Buttigieg actually may have visited that space today. This park is not like no other in our city. Located off the Cultural Trail and overlooking the interstate, it is a testament to the power and diversity of transportation in our city. Several years ago, Tom Batista, a visionary small business owner in our neighborhood, undertook the effort to create the Idol for the community. After a good start, and like some projects do, it ran into a bit of red tape getting approved at the federal level. But after a phone call to Congressman Andre Carson, we were able to bring that vision to life. So I just want to say, it's not every day that you get to introduce one of your real-life heroes. And Congressman, before I say this, my admiration for you goes back to the Neighborhood Stabilization Program days and your work in affordable housing. So that's who I would like to now introduce, not just a hero of mine, but a champion for Indianapolis, a champion for transportation, and a champion for empowering residents, Congressman Andre Carson.
Wow, thank you, Kelly. Wow. Thank you, Kelly, and thank you for your leadership. Wow, thank you for your great words and your kind words. I want to thank Councilor Osley, who was here, and our distinguished mayor, the best mayor in our known solar system, as well as Secretary Pete Buttigieg and all of the elected officials. Would you please stand? Got to acknowledge the hard work from, boy, look at this, look at that. Indiana's finest, I tell you. Thank you all, thank you so much. Yes, indeed. You know, it's great to be here outside of Cummins, especially because from here, any direction you look, you can see federal investment in action. Starting with Cummins itself, federal investments and partnerships have produced new technologies from Cummins to make transportation more efficient and clean. Now, we have the Cultural Trail. In 2010, I stood with then Mayor Ballard to announce $20.5 million from the federal government for this project. And now today, the Cultural Trail is a downtown treasure used by thousands of residents and visitors every day. It's also an economic engine that has had a transformative effect on the communities it connects thanks to federal funding. We have the Julia Carson Transit Center, which I have a particular connection to, and I'm proud to see that legacy continue. We also have the Blue Line and Indy, which will continue to transform our city thanks to federal funding. We also have more funding coming to reconstruct Market Street from Illinois Street to the state capitol, and we have a $25 million raise grant to make downtown streets safer and surrounding neighborhoods more connected than ever before. This is all thanks to federal funding and thanks to President Biden and Secretary Buttigieg's leadership to reinvest in our infrastructure locally and across our nation. Federal investments have always played a big role in making a city bigger, better, and brighter. But under Democratic leadership, we're taking things to the next level. There's no doubt about it. We aren't experiencing an infrastructure moment. We're experiencing an infrastructure decade. I was proud to vote for and champion the bipartisan infrastructure law, which has made historic and unprecedented investments in infrastructure. Now, when I say unprecedented and historic, I mean it. This law represents the largest federal investment in public transportation ever in America's history. It's the largest federal investment in passenger rail since the creation of Amtrak, and of course we have the largest maintenance facility in the country in Beech Grove. It's the single largest dedicated bridge investment since the construction of the interstate highway system. It's the largest investment in clean drinking water and wastewater infrastructure in our history, especially and including finally replacing all lead pipes. Thank you, Mayor and the Council, for your leadership. You know, Dan Parker, we're tackling the climate crisis by making the largest investment in clean energy transmission and electric vehicle infrastructure. Councilor Ossoly has been a leader, and he's led the way for that. Mr. Secretary, it is more than an honor to work with you to bring progress to the Hoosier State. I was just telling President Ossoly that it's an honor to have you back in our state again, in Indiana, and it's an honor to welcome Indiana's finest and America's future to the stage. Help me welcoming Secretary Pete.
There you go, Pete. Thank you. Thanks so much. Thanks for the warm welcome. It feels so good to be back on Hoosier soil. And thank you, Representative Carson. I would be saying nice things about him even if he weren't somebody I would be testifying in front of in a few days because of his important role on the Transportation Infrastructure Committee. He's somebody I admired and appreciated long before I held any office. And now that I am in this role, I am so thankful that he was a partner to President Biden and this administration in getting that bipartisan infrastructure package done. Something that we'll have trouble believing it could have been any other way. But the truth is, this was far from guaranteed it would happen. The political obituary of the bipartisan infrastructure law was written many times before it was passed. But because we had strong support from Congressman Carson and many of his colleagues, including a few crossing over from the other side of the aisle to work with us, we were able to get it done. And I want to make sure you understand there is a direct connection, a direct line of cause and effect between that bill that he and we worked so hard on and this moment where we are putting those dollars to work right here in Indianapolis. I want to thank Kelly Murgo and everybody who is involved as she is in the civic life of this community, because this is also about empowering neighborhoods and neighbors and people who live and breathe the life of their communities and making sure that we are a wind at your back. Just to be clear, we don't generate projects in the DOT headquarters. We don't think up ideas about what you should do with these dollars. The whole premise of this program called RAISE is that the ideas aren't going to come from Washington, but more the funding should. And that's exactly what we're doing here, and it's to support efforts like that. So really glad you could be with us, Kelly. I love being reunited with Vop Osili. We are both a long way from when we were crisscrossing the state back in 2009, 2010, and so glad both of us found our way into local leadership that has its unique rewards. And congratulations to you on all of the great work that you're doing on council. And let me echo my appreciation to all of the state and local elected leaders who are here, who understand the importance of infrastructure. And that brings me to Mayor Hogsett, who I'm so pleased to be with today and who I appreciate so much. The role of mayor has only become more demanding and somehow even more important than I felt it was when I wore that title. It has been difficult, it has been rewarding in whole new ways, and this city has so much to be proud of under Mayor Hogsett's leadership. But I know it's not easy. Although, come to think of it, I don't remember any federal official coming along with $25 million when I was mayor. So you're doing something right there, too. And I'll say more about this later, but winning this grant really does reflect well on the city, on his administration, and on the entire community. I also want to emphasize the importance of the transportation vision that you see at play here, that is looking to the future and recognizing the true function of our shared infrastructure. Part of the problem is that you have some roads and streets here that were designed around only one function, which is to move vehicles as quickly as possible. And so you wind up with roads whose purpose ought to be to circulate within a city and a downtown, but whose function became to evacuate the downtown. Of course, it is important for roads and streets that cars be able to move along them efficiently, but that cannot be at the expense of all of the other important roles of a street, the role that it plays as the very arteries of a neighborhood, the ability of people to walk or bike or roll in a wheelchair alongside those same roads and streets. They have to be able to coexist peacefully with vehicle traffic. But when you have one-way city streets in the wrong places, people drive faster in a way that is more dangerous for other drivers and passengers and for people who are walking or biking, those vulnerable road users alike. In South Bend, we went through this. We converted that one-way pair that people used to use to speed through our downtown into a two-way street that allowed people to drive and bike and walk more safely. And by the time it was done, we had already notched some $90 million of new investment from business owners who said that the transformation of the streets was a factor in their decision. And when I hear about the investment coming to downtown Indianapolis, add a couple of zeros to that. And there is no question in my mind that that partly has to do with the good transportation work that's going on here. So just as we saw in our community, people who had their doubts at first become evangelists later, as we saw restaurants thriving, as we saw, most importantly, 5 years after that project was completed, a pattern of traffic collisions decreasing and people getting safer. We saw the power of these kinds of investments. Now, we're not saying every one-way street in the world ought to be converted, but there are 8 streets that Indianapolis has identified where the current designs have allowed over 1,400 crashes in just about 3 years. So modernizing that into not just two-way streets, but complete streets with bike lanes, multi-use paths, and sidewalk improvements would make residents safer, would bring economic development to the community, and can improve quality of life. And by the way, not for nothing that we're right alongside the cultural trail, which I was reminded today was supported with federal infrastructure dollars. See, this program that we're announcing this funding from, RAISE, is an expanded version of a program formerly known as TIGER. And so for anybody wondering about whether those public infrastructure investments are worth it, I think anybody looking at those taxpayer dollars from TIGER and the return on investment on those would be very pleased with the return on investment on what you in this community have been able to do with that. And now we're looking to the next stage, the next level, the next chapter, and that's why I'm delighted to formally celebrate the Biden administration's award of $25 million to transform these 8 streets in Indianapolis.
Yeah, Pete.
You've heard a little bit about the dimensions of the project. It'll modernize New Jersey and Alabama streets, which flank us here, as well as 3 other street pairs, Capitol in Illinois, Delaware and Pennsylvania, and East and College. And these changes are going to make it safer and just more pleasant to walk or bike, to catch that new bus rapid transit, which is also a huge part of the potential and the quality of life in this city. The projections suggest that these changes could contribute to a 25% reduction in crashes, which would mean hundreds of fewer people being injured, and very likely means that lives will be saved here. And if they perform at the same level as some of the other conversions we've seen, they will likely bring more and more customers to businesses here and attract new businesses to open their doors nearby. And it's just going to feel more vibrant here. Now, one other thing I think is important to mention, we are thrilled with the record level of funding that we have and with the ability to say yes more often than ever. But this is still one of our most competitive programs. We got about $15 billion in requests for about $2 billion in funding. So it means only the most compelling applications, even among those that we were impressed with, were able to get funded. And again, it speaks to the quality of this project and the vision of this community that that's going to be a reality. So congratulations again to Indianapolis on this award. Now, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention a few other ways that our department is partnering with folks here in Indianapolis to help travel become more safe, more efficient, more affordable, and more sustainable. We're helping Indigo. I know a lot of folks are here from Indigo. We're excited to be partnering with you to replace older buses with diesel-electric hybrid buses that are going to mean cleaner and healthier air for the community, and that are going to be more reliable for riders. And we're helping to fund the completion of those bus rapid transit lines that we know are offering better mobility options for Indy residents. We're helping the Rethink Coalition plan options to reconnect communities across a section of 6570 and that downtown inner loop, the original construction of which displaced 17,000 people. And standing in that remarkably creative idle park gave me a sense of how that affected the neighborhood, and made me even more pleased that we are now partnering with community members here to do planning work to envision a different and better future through our Reconnecting Communities program. And we're teaming up with the Indianapolis Airport to modernize runway and taxiways and install more energy efficient power at the airport. You've already got a lot to be proud of in the airport here, and we're proud to be teaming up with you to take things to the next level.
Mario.
Only other thing I'll mention is that if all that sounds like it's going to be a lot of work to actually deliver on, it is, and that's part of what we're excited about. The official name of the infrastructure package is the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. And we are excited about the good paying jobs this is creating. Just earlier today, I was at the Sheet Metal Workers Local 20 Apprenticeship Training Facility, seeing how they are preparing workers with the skills that they're going to need. And we've seen just in the last 2 years, the union construction industry here in Indiana has had more apprentices than any other year since they started counting. And they've had to add classes just to keep up with the demand. And we're seeing the people who train, they're already working on those improvements that I mentioned at the airport. They're also helping to build that huge new EV battery manufacturing plant in Kokomo that we saw on the drive down here, which, by the way, is just part of $15 billion in private investment in Indiana alone that has been announced since President Biden took office in the manufacturing sector, which we are proud to be bringing back onto American soil where it belongs. And that's just in and around this area. We have gotten to see in the last couple of days how we're improving safety around railroads in Elkhart, how we're supporting workforce in Gary. We are doing railway projects that are going to remove dangerous railroad crossings in Hammond and Schererville. And I had the pleasure of being at the Port of Tell City in Perry County earlier to see how they're going to put our port dollars to work. So the bottom line is we are in the middle of, as the Congressman said, this is not just an infrastructure moment. And we are done with the infrastructure, so-called infrastructure weeks that came and went without result. We are very much at the dawn of infrastructure decade. And for a place that screams transportation infrastructure like Indianapolis, here in the crossroads of America, this is going to mean great opportunity from safety to equity, and certainly when it comes to jobs and economic growth. So again, we are proud to be working with you. Congratulations to the city of Indianapolis, and we can't wait to see where you take things into the future. Thanks again for the chance to be back.
Pete.